Welcome back to International Finance. I am Dr. Finance, Andy Kim. So today we're gonna go through chapter 2 of Ern Resnick and Chulun's International Financial Management, the International Monetary System. So in the end, it's gonna be about fixed versus flexible exchange rate regimes, right? But before that, we're going to talk about how these monetary systems of international FX has been developed, right? And then you will realize that the transition happened from fixed exchange regime to flexible exchange regimes for many different countries. But on the way, we realize that there has been a lot of currency crisis, which is inevitable to a certain extent. We're going to talk about something called impossible trinity in that sense. And then before that, we're going to talk about the birth of something called the Bretton Woods system. There we had a concept about Triffin's dilemma. Those two concepts will be perhaps the most important concept in this chapter, so get ready for that. Now I'm going to split into like 20 minutes lectures, 3 pieces I guess. So let's see if I can do that, alright? So I set up the timer, so 17 minutes from now. So a dog is going to bark over here. Then I'm going to wrap up, okay, my first section. Now let's go. The chapter overview, okay? It's going to be about the evolution of the international monetary system, bimetallism, classical gold standard, interwar period, and then Bretton Woods system, which broke down essentially in 1972, which was the year I was born, yes! And then the flexible exchange rate regime ever since, then current exchange rate arrangements, and European monetary systems. We're going to talk about the ECB, right? How it got, developed, and then we're going to talk about a series of currency crises around the world, like Mexico, Asia, and Argentina. Then we're going to move down to one thing omitted over here, but we are going to talk about briefly is about the Chinese yuan, because China is now number 2 in the world in terms of GDP, and then the influence into this FX market is huge. The thing is, they keep having it as fixed exchange rate, essentially, right? No matter how you call it, we realize it. We recognize it as, virtually fixed ones, right? There's a lot of manipulation going on, but how, healthy is it, right? For the global financial system. We're going to briefly talk about that one. And then fixed versus flexible exchange rate regimes, we're going to compare those impacts. Then we're going to wrap up. Now, 3 functions of money. We have to start from this discussion. It gets back to your economics 101, right? You remember those 3 functions of money? What were those? I give you 5 seconds. Before that, I move on, right? Here, I go back to the history of money, right? Especially Europe, and the next slide is going to be about Asia, okay? And then it's naturally getting back to your idea, the question of the functions of money, right? And Europe, right? In Roman, right? Pax Romana, they called it Juno Moneta, okay? It had the meaning of monitoring, right? Where the money goes, your attention goes. So you monitor your money, right? The same pronunciation. Money, where your attention goes, your heart goes, your brain goes. Swedish krona, okay, is a unit, right, of money. That krona has to do with this crown. Oh, yes, gold, right? Something precious. Precious metal. Norwegian krone is there, right? Euro these days, right? Austro-Hungarian krone, historically, it has been krone. Something related to crown, the crown jewel, right? Or the crown material, gold, right? So it has a lot of meaning, connotation of what? The store of value. one of the functions in money is store of value. It keeps that precious, my precious, right? You remember the Lord of the Ring, the Gollum says, meh, my precious. That's store of value, okay? And then Libra Ponto, that's the source, how do you say? British pound, that word stemmed from Libra Ponto. Libra means what? Touching, it's like you see this balance, right? Why do you need Libra? Because you want to exchange this, use this money as a way of exchanging, okay? So it carries the meaning of what? Exchange, right? We're gonna go there in the next slide. And then dollar, the word comes from Thaler, from Joachimsthal, a Bohemian silver mine. Some of you are from eastern part of Europe, right? You must be familiar with this name, maybe. So Thaler, dollar, US dollar, yes. Now, money in Asia, how do we call it? Well, different countries call differently, but here I find a little bit of commonality, at least in East Asia, 3 countries. Korea, China, Japan. Yeah, Korea comes first. Because I am Korean, right? But Chinese will call it like China comes first. Japanese call it Japanese first. But who cares? We are all in international finance together. Now, how do we call the money, right? The unit of money is won in Korean pronunciation. You see Chinese character over here. A lot of this thing over here, like the square thing or rectangular thing, but it meant to be something circular, right? Because circular is, I don't know, it's like it's Chinese characters, you don't see circular things at all. It has to be something like straight line based so that it will be easier to, print or something, okay? Anyway, so it has a meaning of circle, okay, circle. Even though what you see is a rectangle, this is supposed to be circle, okay? You have to believe me. Circle, one, right? One. Circulating, it's one, right? Korean won and circulating means the same thing. And then in Korean, non-Chinese based, but totally Korean regional words, right? Unique Korean words, ethnic Korean word. It says 돈, 돈, 돈 주세요. 감사합니다. 돈 받았어요? 돈 좀 잘내니까 돈, right? So that's 돈 means like what? 돈다. Okay? 돌아버리겠어요. 이렇게 돈다. It's like circulating something, right? Your head spins. 머리가 돌아요. 이렇게. Or people say it. 돈은 돌아야 제맛이다. The money, is really functioning only when it gets circulated in the economy, right? If you read some Korean newspaper, they frequently say that, right? 돈다, 돌아, 돈, and won, yuan, right? Chinese pronunciation is yuan, and then lo and behold, Japanese, their pronunciation is yen. So all three, their pronunciation is quite similar, meaning the same thing, right? So it carries a connotation of what? Medium of exchange. Money, the second function of money is a medium of exchange. So I would say 3 functions of money: store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. Unit of account. Chinese yuan, Japanese yen. That's, their unit of account, right? Counting how valuable those things are in different units. Korean won, US dollar, right? That's 3 functions. Remember that. I'm going to test you in the exam, so wait for that. Now, evolution of the international monetary system. That's what we're going to do. Bimetallism is the thing we're going to start with. That's essentially from Napoleonic age of Rothschild's beginning, right? Before 1875. Classical gold standard. Actually, that started with the Rothschild family in Britain, right? That's their century, the 19th century, right? The European economy and politics, who was, functioning behind the curtain, right? And they were supporting this gold standard, right? And then interwar period, that's from First World War to Second World War. And then after Second World War, right? They started the European and then American, right, system started this Bretton Woods system. We're going to talk about it, and then the flexible exchange rate regime ever since 1973. Metals used for money, right? I told you money started with the word moneta or something, right? How about the word bank, right? They say it came from the Latin word meaning bench, where the bankers, used to sit and count money over there, right? A little bit more of a digression is the insurance, right? Was just another gambling done in a coffee house called the Lloyd's Cafe, right, in London. And there they were, sitting in the bench, also talking in, sitting in, with this desk or table on it, and then they used to, gather all these underwriters who are interested in betting that certain ships, trade ships, would go shipwreck or not, right? If that ship goes shipwreck, I'm gonna pay you the whole amount of it. It's like a gambling or something like that. That's the starting of the insurance, all right? Yeah, and then metals used for money, yes, bank in Asia, right? We call it 은행, right? 은행 in Korean terminology. You see it over here. And in Chinese pronunciation, it's a yinhang. It's the same Chinese character. And then the Japanese is ginko, right? Ginko, same Chinese character. In, ging, similar pronunciation. You can see some kind of a evolution starting from Beijing, going to the Seoul, and then going to Tokyo, yin, and then ging, right? You can see that trace, right? And then the place where silver goes, silver walks, silver goes, 은행 or 인항 and ginko, that's where the money goes. Makes sense? Bank in Asia. Again, in Asia, money has more connotation of circulation. Money walks, money goes, here and there, motion of the money. More of a digression is Ginza in Japanese place, right? The most expensive place in Tokyo, right? The place means silver seat. It is the most expensive financial district of Tokyo, Japan, where the government used to mint silver coins. Okay, Asia, more of a silver standard, I would say. China, Japan, right? And then Europe, both gold and silver were used as money in the Middle Ages and then coming to recent generations, I guess. Then bimetallism is before 1875, right? Around the time of Franco-Prussian War, right? 1870 or something. Anyway, bimetallism was a double standard in the sense that both gold and silver were used as money. Gold and silver. Some countries were on the gold standard, some countries were on the silver standard, and some on both, right? I cannot see which one is which. I'm not going to test you on that. But here's the interesting thing. Both gold and silver were used as an international means of payment, and the exchange rates among currencies were determined by either their gold or silver contents, right? How much percent of gold is it, right? That determines the value. Now, bimetallism was a double standard, right? In the sense that free coinage was maintained for both gold and silver. Countries on the bimetallic standard often experienced the well-known phenomenon referred to as Gresham's law, right? This is another interesting concept. I'm going to test you in the exam, so wait for that. Gresham's law, 악화가 양화를 구축한다 in Korean way of saying it. Wait for that. What does it mean? Gresham's law says that under the bimetallic standard, the abundant metal was used as money, while the scarce metal was driven out of the circulation because the ratio of the two metals were officially fixed. Okay, so gold and silver, right? Whichever is more precious, you're gonna keep it in your house. You don't want to, spend it as money. Okay, and you want to bring something out of your pocket that is less valuable, like maybe silver, in a usual sense, right? Gold is more precious by my assumption, right? So in the market, gold will be expelled out, okay, whereas the silver will be circulated. So that's the idea of Gresham's law. In Korean expression, they say bad metals will expel out the good metals out of the circulation. 악화가 양화를 구축한다, they say, right? So that's Gresham's law. All right. Suppose that you were a citizen of Germany during a period when there was a 20 German mark, Deutsche Mark, coin made of gold and a 5 German mark coin made of silver. Okay? And then gold suddenly and unexpectedly become much more valuable than silver. Which coin then would you spend? Bring it out of your pocket and give it to somebody else. If you wanted to buy a 20 mark item, and which would you keep? Obviously, gold, keep it, silver, out, right? Because it's going to be more precious. You know that, right? That's Gresham's law. Now, first full-fledged gold standard happened in a monetary system in which currencies are defined in terms of the gold content. Was established in 1821 in Great Britain. I told you after Napoleonic War, and then where the Rothschild family was backing up that British Bank of England, right? And then that was the time around, right, 1821 or something like that. So majority of the countries moved away from gold in First World War, but until then it was essentially gold standard in Britain. Under the gold standard, the exchange rate between any two currencies will be determined by the gold content. Yeah, so that's that 19th century period. Already almost 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up in 3 minutes or something. Let's try it. Classic gold standard. Great Britain was the superpower in Queen Victoria's age. It was the earliest, they were the earliest to experience the Industrial Revolution, of course. And then they did the mass production of woolen clothes, and textile industry developed so much compared to continental Europe. They were exporting to Europe, and then they experienced a trade imbalance, right? Trade surplus. And imported so much tea and spices from China at the same time. So trade with Europe, trade with China, two different stories going on. They imported so much tea and spices from China, and then China, you remember, they were silver standard, right? So to buy those teas, what do you have to give them? Silver, not gold, right? So, and then silver standard, and Asia, since the 17th century, some people say that Britain ran out of silver in their country. Because so many people in their tea time, right, British tea time, they were drinking Chinese tea or Indian tea, maybe chai, and then gold was more abundant in the UK. They say it's not in the textbook, but this is what I learned from other materials. So anyway, so suppose the British pound is pegged to gold at £6 per ounce, whereas the 1 ounce of gold is worth 12 francs, right? Now you see this ratio, okay? £6 per ounce, 12 francs per ounce. Then you can compute the FX rate between pound and franc, which is 6 to 12. So 1 to 2 ratio sets up over there. Deducing from the information given above, £6 must be equal to 12 French francs. So the pound to francs ratio has to be 1 to 2. Okay, exchange rate between the pound and the franc should then set up like this through gold, right? That's gold standard period. During this period, the exchange rate was highly stable under the classical gold standard, provided in environment that was conducive to international trade. The thing is, international trade naturally springs up a lot more when the exchange rate is stable. Okay, stable currency matters, right? Stable currency, stable coin. Is it the same idea? Well, stable coin talking about the Bitcoin kind of things, right? If you try to buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin, would you do that? And the answer is no. Why? Because the Bitcoin itself is too much volatile, crazy, right? So you will regret. That's, same idea. If FX rate between two different countries are too much fluctuating, nobody wants to trade. Okay? You want some stable relation, FX relation between two countries. So as long as there's gold standard, there is a one stable precious metal called gold, okay, which works as a standard among all different currencies. Okay, so that's why they were trading a lot, okay, with stable FX rates. Misalignment of exchange rates and international imbalances of payment were automatically corrected by price-specie-flow mechanism. What the heck is price-specie-flow mechanism? Here we go. So under gold standard regime, right, one country's deficit against another country in trade cannot persist long because of price-specie-flow mechanism. Suppose Great Britain exports more to France, maybe woolen textiles, right? Then France imports from Great Britain. This cannot persist long under gold standard. Net export of goods, the wools, right, from Great Britain to France will be accompanied by a net flow of gold from France to Great Britain. Great Britin will be flooded with gold, right? This flow of gold will lead to a lower price level in France. And then at the same time, it becomes deflationary over there, right? Whereas a higher price level in Britain, so that the woolen products in Great Britain becomes so much more expensive, right? Which means it gets less attractive in continental Europe, France, right? So that the export will shrink down over time, right? The resultant change in relative price levels will slow exports from Great Britain and encourage exports from France. So that's price-specie-flow mechanism. So the classical gold standard, well, the price-specie-flow mechanism was an automatic correction of payment imbalance between countries operating under the gold standard based on the fact that domestic money stock rises or falls as the country experiences inflows or outflows of gold. Now, the key shortcomings of the gold standard was also there when the supply of newly minted gold is so much restricted, okay, that the growth of world trade and then investment can be seriously hampered for lack of sufficient monetary reserve. If the precious metal, gold, right, the supply is not in tandem, increasing in tandem with the increase in world trade or something like that. So that was a serious shortcoming, and is no mechanism to compel each major country to abide by the rules of the game. Okay, now that's the end of the first part of my lecture. Thanks for watching. Let's move down to the next slides, which is about the interwar period monetary system, and then moving down to Bretton Woods system. See you. Bye bye.